Let's talk about the coming apart side of the relational development model. The first stage of the coming apart is differentiating. Differentiating happens when individuals within a relationship start communicating to focus on the individual differences that exist within the relationship. This is kind of the reverse of the integrating stage that we saw in coming together. So all of that we and our language that we were using before start to revert back to I and my language. As relational partners start to kind of redraw the boundaries within their relationship about what is yours, what is mine, and what is ours. For example, one partner within the relationship might express to the other, I'd really like to be able to hang out with my friends sometimes, right? Not our friends, my friends. And so there's that focus on the differences between us. The next stage is circumscribing. In circumscribing, communication decreases as certain areas or subjects start to become restricted and individuals start to close themselves off from each other. So one individual might express to the other, don't worry about problems I'm having at work, I can deal with it. Or else they might say, I don't want to talk about that anymore. So there's a restriction on the topics that can and can't be talked about, or should and shouldn't be talked about, and relational partners start to close themselves off from one another. That being said, just because differentiating and circumscribing are part of the coming apart side of this model doesn't necessarily mean that they are a bad thing. As you can see from the model in the top right-hand corner, both differentiating and circumscribing are part of relational maintenance along with integrating and bonding. So depending on the relationship, differentiating and circumscribing can be healthy parts of relational maintenance. It can be good for the individuals within a couple to want to spend time with their individual friends and have a guys' night or a girls' night or whatever else, right? So it can be a good thing to re-explore those boundaries and renegotiate those boundaries with our relational partners. And circumscribing can be perfectly healthy as well, right? Sometimes our partner just isn't going to be able to help us with certain things, and so it doesn't make any sense for us to communicate with them about those things. So we might just shut off that communication. So differentiating and circumscribing aren't necessarily bad things. They can be perfectly healthy parts of a relationship. However, if a relationship continues to deteriorate, partners might reach the stagnating stage. Stagnating happens when the relationship comes to a standstill, and the individuals within the relationship are basically waiting for the relationship to end, right? It's kind of like stagnant water or standing water. And so in a lot of cases in a stagnating relationship, outward communication about the relationship is avoided. And internal communication within the relationship starts to be frequent. So we start to talk less with our relational partner and start to talk more to ourselves about the relationship. And we can really start to misread some of the signals that our partner is sending us. We might think to ourselves, for example, I don't know why I even asked him out to dinner. He never wants to go out and have a good time. And some people might think, well, if you're stagnating, if you're just waiting for the relationship to end, why not just end it? But this stage can be rather prolonged in some relationships. For example, couples might be separated, but they are waiting for an official divorce to go through. Or else they might find themselves in a situation that it just isn't easy to get out of. But the relationship is still existing because we don't feel like we can just break it off. We might feel like we are in danger if we were to do so. But if we progress past the stagnating stage, we might reach the avoiding stage of coming apart. This is where things really start to unravel. And this is one way that we have to end some of that awkwardness that comes along with the stagnating stage. In the avoiding stage, people start to signal that they want to completely shut down the lines of communication within the relationship. And this signal may be direct or indirect. If it's a direct signal, one partner might literally say to the other, "I don't want to talk to you anymore." Notice that this is different from the language that was used in circumscribing, right? When we were circumscribing, we said, "I don't want to talk about that anymore," ending communication about that particular topic. When we reach avoiding, however, we are completely shutting down those lines of communication and saying, "I don't want to talk to you anymore." That's the direct way of saying it. The signal might also be indirect, however. We might kind of waffle and kind of not be very direct with our partner and just say, "Oh, I just have a lot going on right now, so I probably won't be at home as much, or I probably won't be able to text you as much," and things like that. We might also go so far as to physically avoid the person by not going over to their house or physically leaving a room that they are in. And finally, our relationship might reach the terminating stage. As you can imagine, this is when the relationship ends entirely, and this can happen shortly after initiation, where we decide that the relationship isn't worth it and we just end things right there. Don't go any further, right? Don't go through any of the other stages. We just go straight from initiating to terminating. Or this termination can happen after a 20-year-long relationship. But oftentimes these relationships end because of outside circumstances. So, for example, it might be some sort of geographic separation that causes the end of the relationship, or the relationship might end because of some internal factors. For example, a change in value or personality between partners. This might lead to a weakening of the bond that those partners have. And this termination stage tends to involve some fairly typical communicative elements. So when we are breaking up with someone, especially in romantic relationships, we probably will start with some kind of summary message that recaps the relationship and provides a reason for the termination. For example, we might say, "We've had our ups and downs, but I'm going away to college, blah, 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 blah." Right? It provides some summary, provides some reason for the termination. This message might be followed by some kind of distance message that further communicates the relational drift that has occurred. We might say, for example, that we've really grown apart in recent times. And this message is likely going to be followed by some kind of dissociation message that prepares the individuals in the relationship to be apart from one another by kind of projecting or predicting what is going to happen after the relationship ends. We might say, for example, "It's important for both of us to have some time apart. I know that you'll be just fine." And finally, there's often a message regarding the possibility for future communication in the relationship. And it's everyone's favorite line, "We can still be friends," right? Now, whether or not that friendship actually happens is definitely going to depend on the closeness of the relationship and how messy the termination was. But these are the various stages of coming apart. As we said, not all of them are completely negative, right? Differentiating and circumscribing are an important part of relational maintenance. But if we continue down the pathway and continue down that staircase, it could potentially lead to the termination of the relationship.